The first and most fundamental thing you'll need to learn about ganking is communication. Unless someone knows your intentions, they won't know when to go in, if you want them to bait, etc. Obviously, sometimes you get some people who won't listen or understand you correctly, but 9 times out of 10 this won't be the case. Most of the time you'll want to be communicating with pings. However, I found it can really help to say things like I'm coming to gank top soon, coming bottom when I have ult, coming mid when I get red, etc. You may also want to communicate specifics, for example like you're going to gank through the lane brush, so they should push it up a bit. Another note regarding communication: depending what elo you're at, you may have to ignore a bunch of gank my lane please calls. Let me give some examples here. Let's say you're playing Udyr jungle. The enemy bot lane is Janna Ezreal. Your bot lane is Soraka Kog'Maw, and they're constantly complaining for ganks. Now, short of the other bot lane disconnecting, there's almost going to be no way for you to get a gank off. There's just too much escape and kite, especially against a champion like Udyr. Let me give another example. You have Twisted Fate mid, and the enemy mid is Morgana. You're playing Maokai, and Twisted Fate is complaining for ganks. There's going to be almost no way for you to stun her due to the black shield, let alone if you get past the wards / her snare. It's mostly going to be a waste of time. And for my final example, if say you're playing Alistair jungle, you have a Malphite top, and you both have double gold per 5. The enemy top laner is a 2-0 Aurelia with 150 CS. There's going to be no way for you to kill this Aurelia. You simply won't have enough damage. There are also a lot of things you need to take into consideration when going to gank a lane, and the main ones are: do you have enough CC? Do you have enough damage? Does the enemy laner have tons of escapes to get away with? Does the enemy laner need a gank? But it all should be fed into the final question: is it likely you'll get the kill and escape? If you go top and get a kill but trade 1 for 1, and the enemy gets a Drake or forces the bot lane out of their tower and takes it, it isn't worth it. So here I want to talk about when you want to be ganking. Generally in LoL there's a cut-off point of when a team can do dragon. Knowing this cut-off point as a jungler is important, as you don't want to be ganking top when dragon is up and takeable. You really need to get a good idea of what kind of junglers are good at doing dragon and which aren't. Some are really good at doing it early, for example Shyvana, Udyr and Nocturne, and some aren't so great like Alistar, Maokai and Nautilus. Most of the time, the best and easiest lane to gank is top lane. Generally there will be no wards early game, and it's also the longest lane to gank, and the lane that snowballs the most. Ganking top can definitely win the game by itself. Having a 3-0 Aurelia on your team, and the enemy has Ashe, can be devastating. The amount of time people spend camping top is also longer than any other lane. People will wait in the end of the top brush for 1 to 2 minutes sometimes just to get a kill. Ganking mid can generally be done at any time throughout the laning phase. However, it's more likely to have a random ward placed around there by a support than top. But just like top lane, most of the time it won't have wards, and you want to be ganking mid and top as much as possible before they get wards down. Bot lane can be very difficult to gank since most of the time they start with 4 wards, so unless you know otherwise exactly where their wards are, it should mostly be avoided, especially in the early game. However, pink wards and a nice lane gank can be deadly on bottom. Ideally, if you could gank bot every successful time, it'd be a much better lane to gank than any other lane, simply because there's 2 people in that lane and it gives more advantage for a kill. Ganking bottom can be made much easier by having any of these 3 things: Urgot, Ashe and Nocturne. Nocturne is really good at ganking bot simply because of his ultimate. Combined with either an Ashe or an Urgot ult, it can be an amazing gank to get off. Keep in mind if you're playing a Nocturne with either of these champions to communicate effectively and get some ganks off. You also don't want to be ganking too much. Consider your level compared to the other jungler. Get a good sense of how much XP you are behind them. Also, think about what jungler you're playing. If you're playing a tanky, ganky jungler with lots of CC like Alistar, Nautilus or Maokai, your primary concern should be ganking a lot. However, if you're playing someone fast and that can clear camps well like Udyr, Mundo or Shyvana, sometimes it can be effective just to be jungling and do the occasional gank. The most important thing you need to know about oracles as a jungler is when to buy it. Generally, you need to keep some golden rules of when to buy oracle. First off, the main one is that you really don't want to be getting oracles when you are behind, because it basically makes you further behind, since you aren't buying any damage or health with your gold. And the second rule is, the best time to buy oracles is when you're ahead. If you can have the same damage and tank as the enemy jungler, but also have an oracle, then that's a great advantage to have for your team. Also, if you're playing a tanky CC jungler like Nautilus or Maokai, I would never buy oracles before you get at least 1 gold per 5. Ideally, you want to get it after you have 2 though. After buying your 2 gold per 5s, you should be good for buying at least 2 oracles without falling too far behind. However, don't forget you want to be building into other items as well. You generally mostly want to go around clearing wards while jungling for the first couple minutes of having your oracle. Losing it instantly generally means you've did something wrong or you've got extremely unlucky. Clearing wards like this adds a good amount of pressure onto the map without actually doing anything. It also wastes some money on the enemy team as well. You will also have to be a paranoid parrot once you've bought the oracle, simply because people are going to be out to get you. Don't underestimate what people will do just to get that oracle off you. Multiple exhausts and flashes will be used to get rid of an oracle. Play safe and generally don't engage in straight up 2v2s or 3v3s if you can avoid it, because there's no point in risking your oracle if you can slowly remove vision and get ganks off that way. If you're going to be ganking, then it's definitely an advantage to know where people generally are going to ward. There are also inventive ways you can use to get around these wards. I'll cover all of it in this section. Now I pretty much have to categorise where people place wards depending on the elo bracket. From my personal experience, lower elos generally place wards in these locations. As you can see, in the lower elo picture there are randomly placed wards on the top and bottom lanes. People aren't warding in the tri-brushes effectively, possibly due to the fact that they can't rely on their mid lane warding in the correct position to make use of their wards as well. These are just the common ward placements that I see around. However, a lot of these wards are inefficient. This is a picture of the most efficient ward placements, and you generally see setups like this at higher elo. As a jungler, the very least you should be warding one side of mid. There's no wards down at all, just ward one side and tell your mid to do the other. Make sure you aren't warding the same side as someone else, just in a different location. In the high elo picture, the red side's wards are the most efficient, but you can easily get around them by going through the Dragon Pit if you have a jungler like Tryndamere, Shaco or Jarvan. Alternatively, you can just be a boss and flash over. There are also a bunch of places people place wards if they know you have an oracle. Make sure to check these as well so you aren't getting tricked into thinking they have no vision. Most of these places are in brushes right next to the usual spots people ward. For me to explain how to lane gank effectively, you first need to know what lane ganking is. There are 2 ways to lane gank. One is to literally line yourself up and run down the lane and get your laner to do some form of CC, then follow up with your own sort of CC and just take them down. The other more effective way is to ask your laner to push up the minions and sneak into the brush, making sure there's no ward in it by reading their movements, a pink ward or an oracle, then simply taking the kills. Lane ganking is actually most effective on top because a lot of top laners don't ward their own lane for some reason. However, most lane ganking is mostly done in high elo, simply due to the fact that not so many people know about it. I can only assume the tactic of lane ganking was adopted simply due to the fact people had no wards in there and some smart individual decided to start hiding in those brushes. Ganking through lane can be so effective if you know someone has wards in all the regular spots, but not in the brush, because most people will play safe if they have no wards up just because you clean them with your oracle, but if you come through the lane brush and have wards up, it's likely they'll play as they normally will, which can be aggressive. That then allows you to take them completely off guard and cleanly and easily get kills.